Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I'm your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with James Schlosser. James is the Senior Sales Representative at Ruth Simple Inc. James is an expert in helping sales professionals achieve real success without compromising their values or cutting corners. After becoming a top sales performer, James nearly lost it all due to burnout and complacency. Today, he is recognized as an award-winning sales leader in the roofing industry, achieving a staggering $3.1 million in revenue last year, all without burning out and compromising his family or faith. James is also a keynote speaker and is brought in to speak on success, balance, and value alignment. You can find James by going to his LinkedIn at James Schlosser or Instagram at that.james.guy or by going to his website at jamesschlosser.com. Hello, James. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Olivia. I'm really stoked to be sitting down with you and having a good chat.
Oh, I'm so excited because there's so many things we've talked about that, we get to dive in even more today. But to start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to James Schlosser?
Yeah, so success kind of looks like an all-around thing for me. So obviously we have the career financial success, and I think that's really good and important. But we also have just a success in other areas. So successful relationships, I think, are kind of the hallmark of what success really is, and then as well as just, my faith, relationship with family, that sort of thing. So it's less about success is less about like I make a lot of money, and it's more like I'm a successful person if I'm a good person and caring about other people, like genuinely. That's what success means to me.
And I think that's so important to recognize, like caring about other people can add so much value to your life as well and can make
hmm
such a difference in that impact. I want to start off by discussing how you got into becoming a sales representative and going door to door and that journey because door to door sales can be very difficult. So,
hmm
what made you decide not only to go into sales, but to go into door to door sales?
Yeah, Olivia. So that's a really great question. Thanks for asking. So before I got into door to door sales, I had spent 7 years working for my brother in law in a wood shop. And it was a really unique business structure. Rather than buying wood from like the sawmill and making furniture, what he did was he would take down these old dilapidated barns that were scheduled for demolition because of like property insurance issues. And then what I did was I helped him take down the barns and then process the old barn lumber to make custom reclaimed furniture that we would sell on Etsy. So my brother-in-law, his wood shop has been featured on Etsy. He was like one of their top businesses for a while. It's still on there, very active. But I spent 7 years doing that, and it didn't really make a lot of money, right? And so, but for me, it was really I wanted to come into that industry of woodworking just so I could get a good work ethic. I didn't believe that I really had that. And then around 2016, I met the woman that became my wife, and we were engaged and getting ready to get married. And I just remember like trying to find ways just to make more money. And I had a lot of friends who were in the insurance industry and the roofing industry. And so I remember about halfway through our engagement, my brother-in-law pulled me aside, and he's just an unbelievable man, and he's done so much for me in my life, and he's a big part of the reason I am successful today. But I just remember him saying, the wood shop has been really great, James, but you have priorities now. You're getting married, you're starting a family. You need to just go out and get a job that's going to make money to support your family. And I'd give my heart to that wood shop for a number of years, but it got to the point where I had to make that transition. And so I had a lot of friends going into the roofing industry, kind of same thing, they were young, they were getting married, starting families. And so the whole community that I was around was kind of headed out towards that industry. And so that's sort of how I got into it.
For you, what was it like, as you said, as you were getting into it, fellow colleagues and people you knew were also getting into those kind of industries. What was it like having that group kind of all go down this path at one time, knowing you had other people to kind of lean on to support that were going through the same transition as you at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, that was huge for me, and there were a lot of guys that were younger than me. I mean, I had a lot more experience working than some of these other guys going into the industry, and they were doing really great, and they were bringing in great money, and they were bringing in all these jobs going door to door. So for me, I looked at them and I'm just like, hey, if they can do it, I think I can do that if I really put my best foot forward and work really hard. I think I have a shot at, doing door to door sales. And it wasn't just door to door sales. I mean, we're 100% commission, so we don't bring in any salaries or anything like that. So it's like the pressure is really on in this industry to go out there and really grind and really hustle and really make something of yourself. So, but it really, having that community, having those other guys that I already knew doing it was just huge for me. And it kind of gave me sort of enough confidence to get in and get it started.
And I want to dive into it because something you just said of, you're all commission based. And I think that's sometimes really important to remember, especially when you're getting knocks on your door, people are walking around. They're not necessarily making any money unless they end up selling you something, which people tend to forget sometimes. But also, it was that pressure of being very high. Like you had to be performing if you want to make that income. For you, as you kind of just mentioned, you could have those moments of that pressure of like, okay, I haven't brought any sales. Everyone's turning me down and needing to perform. How did you handle that?
Yeah, there's a lot of anxiety when I got started. It was really interesting. Before I was in roofing, I was doing this thing called ladder assist, where you're working as a third party contractor for different insurance companies doing hail and wind inspections. And that was paying pretty good. That was my first year of marriage. My wife and I were pregnant with number one. And I mean, I was doing pretty good at it, but I knew with roofing, there was just an opportunity to go a lot higher. And, my wife and I both wanted her to be a stay-at-home mom. And so for me, it's like I needed to try to figure out how to make that income gap, close it basically. So starting out, I mean, it was a lot of anxiety and just a lot of work. But again, just having these other guys, seeing them bringing in jobs, I knew for me, it was just a learning curve. And I just had to go out there and get it. So when I started, it was pretty much like day one. I was like the guy that was training me. I just showed up to his house at 8 in the morning, and like he was not even thinking about going out till later in the day. I was like, okay, I got to learn. Like, where are we going? Where are the storms? What's the pitch? Can we do some role play on this? And I was just really like, I have to make this work, or I have to go back to my old job. And I had everybody at my old job sort of like making fun of me, being like, oh, he's not going to make it in roofing and he'll be back in 6 weeks and that kind of stuff. And I remember telling myself, like, okay, look, maybe I will and maybe I won't. I've never done this, but I'm going to give myself 6 weeks to try to get some results. And so I just went out there 5, 6 days a week for just hours and hours and hours. And I started to make it happen. And I remember that first job that I got, I actually knew the guy's daughter just through mutual connections here in town. And he signed up. He signed up to get his roof inspected and file an insurance claim. And when I had that, I was like, okay, that's how it's done. I just have to take that experience and replicate it over and over again. And that's sort of how I really got started in the industry.
And I think you brought up a great point of, you have to just dive in when you're thinking
Yeah.
about transitioning into whether it's a different industry or whatever it might be. You have to give yourself the grace period to be like, this is what I'm doing. No matter the outcome, I just have to try it and give it my all. Because if I don't, then it's not about proving other people right or wrong. It's
Right.
about doing it for yourself. Now, as you
Hmm.
said, you really put in the work of going out there continuously, practicing just everything all together ended up giving you that one moment. And that one moment you were like, okay, if I can do this and I could just replicate it, then we're good because it's now given me kind of that confidence boost,
Hmm.
if you would say, of going, okay, I made it happen. I got this one. And for you, what was getting that first one really feeling like that moment? of knowing, okay, I signed that
Mhm.
first person, and then the process to get to the second person?
Yeah. So for me, the first job was in a neighborhood, and getting that first job was just like it was like the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing it. Like I'm actually going to make money in the roofing industry doing this. And it was so, yeah, just thinking back, like inspecting that roof and coming down, being like, okay, there's damage. I think we can get this filed through your, insurance company. You only pay your deductible, and he signed everything off. Signed all the paperwork, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then the second one was really, and this is something that I had sort of seen in training and had heard other guys do. So I just did it. I basically took that guy and took his story and went to like the next house and said, "Oh, Bob across the street, he just signed up. There's damage. I think we can get his roof approved. If there's damage over there, I figure there might be damage over here." And then I just started to sort of pitch that way to all the people around his house, all of his neighbors. And then eventually it's like I got my second sign, and then I got my third sign. And then, it just started to kind of slowly take off from there. But yeah.
James, as you kind of brought up in these stories, there are definitely those high highs of signing the deals and knowing you've made the commission and just getting that. And there's the lows, the low lows of, knocking continuously, not getting the deal, knowing that you're only commission based. For you, what was it like getting rejected continuously? Because that is part of door-to-door sales.
Oh yeah.
We all do it, let's be honest. We
Yeah.
all see the person coming and you're like, "Okay," like, just no. But for you, what was that like? And then what was the experience like learning from that? Knowing that might be coming, but continuously pushing forward to be like, okay, this person might say no, or they've said no, but I'm going to go to the next person with no grudges, no like upset, and just keep moving forward.
It's funny. I've been in this industry now for almost 5 years, and I've seen a lot of people come for like a week or two and be all in. And I'm going to make so much money and knock all these doors and get all these jobs, and then 2 weeks later they're out. It's because the the rejection is very real and can be really really hard. And I think a lot of it comes down to psychology. Like, what's your approach to that rejection? So, yeah, I mean, it's a big wall to climb because it's going to happen. And it's going to happen most when you're getting started. So you're going to be dealing with the most amount of rejection right when you're getting started. So for me, it just kind of came down to understanding that it's a numbers game. Again, kind of going back to seeing that other people were doing this, seeing that other people were successful, and just kind of realizing like, look, when you're getting into this industry, when you're getting into door knocking, it's all a numbers game. So all you really have to do is math, right? So what my company says now, and I didn't really know this back then, but I trusted the system of just keep knocking, and you're gonna get jobs. You're gonna get rejected, but you're gonna get jobs. And you just sort of have to push through that rejection and just let it go. And now some of the new guys coming in, what the training is just saying like, look, it's a numbers game. What we found the average is when we track our data is it's 40 doors to a sign. So for every 40 doors that you knock, you should get a job on average. So from there, you just have to do math. If you want to get, let's say, 10 jobs a month, right? What's the math? That's 400 doors. So our goal, our job, when we clock in and clock out, if you want to, approach it that way, is you got to go in and you got to knock 400 doors and give your pitch, hopefully 400 times if they're home. And if you just start knocking that down, right? If I have 400 doors a month by 4 weeks, it's 100 doors a week. I go out 3 times a day, 3 times a week. That's 30 doors every single time. And if I just continue to show up, if I continue in that consistency, in 1 month, I should hit 400 doors. And I have seen it with new guys coming in now where they're just going to be on the bottom of the barrel. And I've had guys call me, be like, man, I've just been rejected. I haven't gotten anything. I've been working hours, just, I'm just hot. I'm sweaty. I'm up on these, roofs. I'm not getting them signed. And driving hours and hours to trying to find these jobs. And I'll just say, keep with it, get those 400 doors. And then at the end of the month, you see their numbers and you're like, yeah, they did it. Uh, but I mean, it really comes down to having that grit and determination of just trusting the system and then consistently showing up and doing the work and not being lazy and not letting the rejection or what you perceive as failure get into your head, but just keep showing up, keep being consistent and trust the process. That's like the best advice that I hear from the top 1% producers in the door knocking industry are those three things.
And I think it's really important to trust that process and trust yourself that you can do it, even though it might be getting difficult or it's a bad day and you're getting those lots of no's. You have to understand it is a process. And the more
Mhm.
you do it, like anything else, you'll get better at it. And there will be that person that wants to say yes. For you, as you've grown in the industry,
Mhm.
how have you changed your mindset and continued growing?
Yeah, it was a really big struggle for me kind of going through the next couple of years because once I learned that I could do it, I learned I could do it and I made, more money than I'd ever seen in my life and we eventually got to a point where, statistically men are just like they're providers when you married, you got a family, it's like it's the guy's job to go out there and provide and that's all really good and true. The problem is just kind of like our identity kind of stops there with just the physical providing, right? So it's like going in and I'm feeling really good about myself and it's like, got a new truck, like check the box, buy a house, check the box, have a kid, check the box, like do all these things, and I'm working, making money, got the savings built up. And it's just like, I'm feeling really good about myself. And then that's kind of just where it stopped. And there was this second wall. And it wasn't the wall of just rejection or failure. It was just the wall of like, I don't know what's next because I don't know what I want because my vision and what I can see doesn't really extend past this. And I really began to struggle with a lot of complacency. And yeah, that was something that took a long time to figure out and learn and just it was soul searching for a really long time. I was still bringing in the jobs, I was still making good money, but that complacency can really drag you down if you don't tackle and fight it.
And I think that's really important of what you brought up. You were going towards a goal and trying to check all the boxes you thought you wanted to
Mhm,
check, you thought you needed to check to really hit that level of at the time what success looked like to you, right?
mhm.
Of making sure all these things were checked off. And then you got to that point and you're like, okay, but what now? And you got complacent in it. For you, how did you what was that moment of realization like where you really took that step back and go, I'm too complacent in what I'm doing now? And then how did you personally get past that complacency?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I had to take a pretty hard road to kind of learn how to flip all of that, right? So, we ended up having some mold issues in our house, and mold is just it's a crazy thing. You can lose so much. There's these little spores called mycotoxins and they're very toxic, and there's a lot of neurological damage that can happen to a person when they're dealing with mold, and so we found out kind of like I think at the end of 2020 that we had some mold. And it just, so many things were happening. We had to move out of our house for several months. We lost a lot, but it just basically got to the point where I was just, we were losing everything. We were losing all of our money. I was still complacent. I wasn't driven. I was trying to find like another job or like, what else do I do to kind of get this drive back and this feeling of fulfillment back because I don't really have it anymore. And yeah, I mean, we just went through a very very challenging year, and kind of in that, just kind of realize it got to the point where I mean, we lost all of our money. We didn't really have anything anymore, and I remember having to make a really humble call to my boss, just being like, "Hey, I need to pay my mortgage next month," but and here I am, like I was already a top rep in my company, and now I'm sitting here a year later, being like, I need to pay rent. Could you help me out? And I know we have a great boss, and he was totally understanding, and but that was a wake up call to me where I was like, I have to get my bootstraps on, and I have to go work. I don't have time, and I don't have resources to be complacent. So it's kind of in a way, I was kind of back where I started mentally, where I just had to go out there and really work. And the company rolled out this incentive, and they said, "Hey, if you hit like $2.1 million, there's this awesome incentive we'll give you. It'll be great." And I'm kind of one for chasing dangled carrots. So when you put like an incentive in front of me, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna hit that, and it's gonna be great, and then I'll get a reward, and it'll be super fun. So I chased it, and it really came down to the number game, but then also just, we have to kind of get back up on our feet. And that year was really kind of the recognition that even at the bottom, even in that ditch, there was so much that I did have, so many gifts that I did have. And money and status wasn't really going to take those particular gifts away, like the gift of my family, and I was complacent in that. And there was just this huge, just mental shift that I had to make, and just realizing like I have so much, like I need to go out there and work. There's a lot that I can give. There's a lot that I need to give. And so that was kind of my mentality going into 2022, was just, you have to work and have like the best, the best year ever, and then as I just started to kind of pick up the pieces and started going out there, knocking on doors, getting those jobs, things really started to fit into place for me. And yeah, I closed the year at, topping 3 million in revenue, which the company had never seen before. And so I kind of smashed a record there. But I mean, it really just took realizing kind of what complacency was in its nature, which is really just a lack of gratitude for what you have. And you can get so stuck when you just kind of are moping through life and being like, woe is me, isn't going to get you anywhere. But being able to kind of take inventory of your life and understand what there is that you do have. And we all have something. Like, all of us have something that we can be grateful for. The very fact that you and I woke up this morning is something to be grateful for. We were never guaranteed today, and we're not guaranteed tomorrow. So there's something that we can always be grateful for. And that right there, like, when you have a mind that lives in gratitude, when your heart lives in a spirit of gratitude, there's no room for complacency. It cannot exist.
Of course. And I think you brought up a few amazing points there. One of which you kind of said without saying, but for you, it was very much, when they dangled the carrot in front of you of that incentive, you were like, I can do this. This is that new challenge for me to really go and dive into. What I see people do when they get complacent, or in general, is as a leader, as well as the employee or whoever it might be, you have to understand how the people around you will perform and their level of the recognition they want. And sometimes identifying that for yourself, but also for others, creates these unique experiences and these bonds of understanding each other. I was just having this conversation recently with someone of, what do your employees actually value of being recognized? Is it that email of, hey, you did a great job on this? Is it that incentive of, okay, if you do this, you'll get this to be recognized? Like, what is it? And once you identify that for yourself, you really show yourself as well how you perform and what will keep your drive in moments of, as you said, complacency, because then yourself, hey, this is what I need to keep pushing forward. It's those small things and how I view being pushed that really sets the difference. Because, in leadership in general, I'll take sports. If a coach just yells at you and you shut down and you don't listen when you start to get yelled at, the coaches then, starts to yell at you consistently, you're not perceiving any of that. You're not going to perform better. You're going to actually end up performing worse. Whereas if the coach goes, okay, this player and ends up performing better when I yell at them, and this person ends up performing better when I have that discussion of like, hey, that was a great play, but maybe you could do these things better. Or hey, you know what? That was great leadership skills on the field. And that's all, whether it's one-on-one or in a group setting, you'll see the outcomes shift dramatically. And like you said, that kind of happened with you in that moment of, hey, I don't know what I'm going to be doing, or I need to get back out there. I know I really got to keep pushing through. And then that dangle of the carrot, and you go, oh no, this is the game changer. Like, I'm going to do that. And it was that
Yeah.
goal. And then knowing to yourself, like, I'm going to hit that goal really
Yeah.
can make the difference.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think for me, it's just the idea of now being consistent in your success really comes down to, I mean, it's the question why. Like why do you want to keep making a lot of money? Like what do you want to do with that money, or what do you want to do with your status or whatever that is? And it just comes down to, I think, real true consistency comes down to understanding what it is that you truly value in life.
Mm.
So that's the big question of, what do you actually value? Not what you say you value, but what your actions show that you value, or what do you want to value? Because I think that we need to be approaching life really from the standpoint of a value system. And that is kind of like, that's the coal to the fire that we need in our in our, financial success, or in our businesses or our careers, is we have to feel it towards something in us, right? Something that's personal to us. It can't just be like, I'm going to go work for a company and make them a lot of money, and that's just sort of life and that's my identity. It's like, no, you got to aim towards something higher, something that is personal to you, something that you really want to invest in, and then allow your job to really fund that, or to give you that sense of fulfillment for that higher thing.
And I love how you said, and the key that stuck out to me there is, what is your value? What do you see as value, and what are you working towards? Because, like you said, once you identify that and you identify kind of that inventory of life, like you said earlier, of what do you see as high importance? What are you grateful for? It all plays into each other. And you have to
Hmm.
understand that it all plays into each other. So now that you've gone through that, and like you said, it ended up being a record selling year for you, what do you hope to help others in the door-to-door sales industry understand the journey and understand, all the moving pieces in it, and what are you doing in that aspect? Because I know you're very involved in a lot of different things in helping other people not get to that point anymore through your
Hmm.
speaking, through going and talking to others about it. So what has that also been like?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's helping people understand, because I mean, look, my story isn't just me. Like, I'm not the only one that's going through this sort of thing. I think there's a lot of people out there that are just trying to find, like what do I actually really want? And so one of the things that I do, I taught a master class on this, about a month or two ago, and it's really like, okay, we have to define our values. So how do we define our values? How do we define what's actually really important to us? And I just pose this question. This is sort of like a Socratic method of going about it, but it's this term called memento mori, which is Latin for remember your death. If you had 2 weeks, let's say, left to live on this earth, like the doctor said, hey, not looking good. You got 2 weeks. What would you do? Who would you spend time with? What loose ends would you want to pick up in life? Where would you spend the most precious time of your life, the last 2 weeks of your life? Where would you spend that? And I think if we really just take some time and reflect on that, we'll understand like what it is that we really value. And if we can't quite get it, that sort of meditation practice of like, what would I do if I had 2 weeks left to live, can kind of take us on a journey to discover what it is that we actually really do want in life. Like what are we actually living for? Because we need to start living for that now.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think asking yourself those hard questions and really going off the theme of like, if you only had 2 weeks to live, because a lot of us also take a step back, or when things get crazy, you're like, I can do that tomorrow, or I could spend time with that person tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's not a big
Yep.
deal. What happens if tomorrow doesn't come? Well, what are you going to do then? That's time you didn't get with someone. That's, the moments that were more important to you, maybe priority wise, you didn't get to have because you didn't know tomorrow was going to be your last day. So the theory of the 2 weeks is great because if you keep asking yourself those hard questions of like, who would you spend it with? What would you do? Where might you go? How might you spend it? Are great questions to really ask yourself in general to find if you're not sure what you value or hey, you might think you value one thing over something else, but
Mm.
in reality, something else falls higher on the list of what you want. And again, like success, that can change. And I think that's the
Yeah.
amazing thing about it is like success that can continuously change and adapt to how we're growing and how we're changing. That 2 week mindset of how would I value and rank what's going on in my life? Who would I want to spend with it? All those questions can shift over time, and that's okay as well. And that's very important. So continuously ask yourself that question.
Yeah, and two, just one thing to add to that is that what I found, and this is really sort of how like my whole like really successful year last year kind of came about, was that as I really started to prioritize the things that I valued in life, right? Um, I just became a lot more confident in myself. Like, no, I'm gonna spend like really good time with my kids. I'm going to really, really do my best to be attentive to my wife. That actually kind of gives you a sense of fulfillment. It also just gives you a sense of confidence that, if we put it off till tomorrow, right? Like if we have the mindset of putting it off till tomorrow, it's like, well, tomorrow may not ever come. Back to what we're saying. But I found literally like my close rate at the doors is better. In a weird way, the less I spend time on the doors. Right. So that when I'm doing all these other things in life that I want to do, that things that make me happy, things that make me fulfilled, when I am out on the door, it's like I just go. I'm 100% in it. Like I'm doing this for a purpose higher than the doors itself, higher than the money, you know, and I feel like we become more successful overall and making more money or generating more revenue for our company just kind of comes as like an added bonus to this other thing that you're now pursuing, right? It's like it's like we're focusing too much on the singular thing rather than looking at the fact that the singular thing is part of a much bigger ecosystem, right? Which is the ecosystem of success. And we just focus on the bigger thing as a whole. Those minute things will have radical change to them.
I couldn't agree more. And that being said, James, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, like you had mentioned before, and then I'm on Instagram, that.james.guy, or you can hop on over to my website, jamesschlosser.com.
Awesome. Thank you, James, for all of your insight today.
Yeah,
A
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation are ask yourself, what is your approach? And what is your approach to rejection? How do you handle it? How do you push forward in it? As well as one of my favorite stats from our conversation today is 40 doors to a sign. So always think about that, whether it is actually for 40 doors and knocking on those 40 doors to get that one signature, or it might be 40 no's until you get that yes. Whether you're starting your business or trying to sell something, you can always use that analogy that it's not going to be a one for one situation. And whenever you get to the point where you're going, I can't do this, remember that at some point, someone has to say yes, as well as show up and do the work. As long as you're consistent, you're showing up, you're doing the work, you're going to get the results. It might just take time. As well as complacency is a lack of gratitude. So take an inventory of what you value in life, rank it, understand it, and keep asking yourself those questions of what do I value? If I only had 2 weeks to live. I love how you said that, James. Of I only have 2 weeks to live. What would I do? Would I spend it with? And remember that those might shift. So over your time, ask yourself that question again and see if things have changed, and then change accordingly. Because as well, James had mentioned, When you do that, you end up performing better in all areas of your life. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, James Schlosser. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.